What's up, everybody? My name is Josh LaFleur from Late Start Piano. Today we're going to be talking about why you really need to use a metronome. Doesn't matter if you've been playing for a year, 6 months, if you've been playing for 20 years. A lot of people, they feel like they don't want to use a metronome, or they feel like they don't need to use a metronome, but really everybody should be using one no matter what. And we're going to get into all of that here in a second. But this is specifically for the beginner piano players as well, people who have no prior musical experience. They never played piano, they never played any other instrument, they don't really know how to read music, or maybe they have a elementary level of reading music. You really need to use a metronome, and I'm going to explain all of that in this video. So point number one, metronome will fix your speeding up and dragging issues, right? So a lot of times, especially if you're new, you are trying to just play a song and just by any means necessary. So when that happens, when you start to get to more difficult pieces, you might have to slow way down, or difficult sections of the song, you might have to slow way down. You might get anxious, so you start speeding things up way too fast. And what happens when you do that is your phrasing gets thrown out the window. Phrasing is something that my teacher is really big on as well. And it really consists of two things. So first thing when it comes to phrasing is, are you coming in on time? Are you coming in on beat when you're supposed to? So if you're supposed to be playing on beats and of 2 and beats 4, are you coming in on the and of 2 and beats 4? Or are you coming in on beats 3 and then the and of 3, right? That's one piece of it. The second piece of it is, how long are you holding the notes for? So if you're in 4/4 time and you have a half note, are you holding it for 2 beats, or are you holding it for 2.5 beats, 1.5 beats? And same thing with a quarter note. Are you holding it for 1 full beat, or are you only holding it for half a beat, for 3 beats? You need to make sure when it comes to phrasing, again, first of all, you're coming in on time, you're coming in on the beat that you're supposed to, and then you're holding that note or holding that rest for as long as you're supposed to be for the duration of that specific note. And that's where metronomes, this is the obvious point of a metronome, that's where they can really help you, because it is something that can hold you accountable and make sure that the notes you're playing are actually for the correct duration and on beat. So if you don't have a metronome and you kind of struggle with your sense of rhythm maybe, or maybe you struggle a little bit with reading music, it can be difficult to constantly hold yourself accountable and keep you in time and make sure you're playing what you're supposed to be without a metronome, because you already have a lot going on, right? You're trying to read the piece of music, you're trying to figure out the correct fingerings, you're trying to figure out how to play the correct notes. There's already a lot for you to kind of figure out. So to throw in keeping the correct time and keeping in the correct duration of notes being played, it just adds another layer of difficulty that we don't really need, especially if you're just starting out. You can just put on the metronome, let the metronome do the work, let it help you keep in time, and it will make playing much easier for you, and you'll learn the song a lot faster. I just have this Sondery Pro Beat metronome. I got it on Amazon. It was like 20 bucks. I like this one specifically because it will play a different sound on beat 1 than the rest of the notes. It's a different clicking sound, right? And what's good about that is you always know where beat 1 is. So it's very important when you're playing music that you know where beat 1 is, because that's probably the most important beat, is beat 1. So if you get lost and you don't know where that is, then your entire phrasing, your entire quality of playing is going to get thrown out the window. So this one is super cool, super awesome. Again, Sondery Pro Beat metronome, 20 bucks on Amazon, whatever it is. I would buy that one, or you can just use a free one on Google as well. Up to you, but definitely be using one. Point number 2 is a lesser known point, but metronomes can help you with your muscle memory long term. And the reason why is because most people, when they don't use a metronome, they will try to play it at target tempo immediately. So they'll try to play it whatever this tempo is supposed to be. They'll try to jump in and play it with that. And as a result, because they're not ready yet, they will be playing the incorrect notes. They'll be using the wrong fingerings. They will be coming in at the wrong time, so their phrasing will be completely off. And they'll play the same song 8 different ways, right? And what happens is, when you are coming in at different times, you're playing the wrong notes, you're using the incorrect fingerings, all of that is going to make your playing much more difficult. It's also going to make it much more difficult for you to remember how to play the song. Because if you're playing the same song, the same, even like 3 measures, if you're playing the same 3 measures 8 different ways every time you play it, then it's going to be much harder for you to remember what it is that you're supposed to be doing. I made a whole nother video about this, which you can check out as well. I think it's called Benefits of Practicing Painfully Slow. I kind of dive much more into this. But you want to be practicing the same way, the correct way every single time so that it gets really locked in and etched into your long-term muscle memory. That's where the metronome can help, because even if the song is supposed to be at 120 beats per minute and you're playing it at 80 beats per minute, it doesn't matter, because at 80 beats per minute or whatever tempo you need, you can make sure that you're using the correct fingerings and you can make sure that you're playing the correct notes that you're supposed to be playing, right? And if you play the same thing the same exact way, it's going to be much easier for your mind and your muscles to remember what it's supposed to be doing. So you're only giving it the correct way, and that's the way it's going to remember, and that will help you remember what you're supposed to be doing long term, right? And fingering is a huge part of it as well, because if you're using the wrong fingerings because you're playing way too fast and you're trying to just play the song by any means necessary, and you use the wrong fingering, then you're going to be setting yourself up for a lot more work, because you're going to have to struggle to play the next note, and then the next note you're going to use the wrong finger, so you have to struggle and try to fix it while you're playing to get the correct finger, and it's just a mess. It's kind of like dominoes. You knock over the first domino and then 500 will fall down in a row just off of the one correct push. Same thing with playing the piano, right? The dominoes fall down, it's effortless, they just do it naturally. Same thing with the piano. You play the first note with the correct finger, then you play the second note with the correct finger, the third note with the correct finger. You're just helping yourself lead into the next note. You're helping yourself lead into the next note. You're making it much easier for you to play, and it's going to be much more smoother, and you're going to actually be able to play it faster because your fingers are already where they're supposed to be, right? So fingering with the metronome, huge part of learning piano, and it will save you a lot of aggravation in the future if you just put the metronome on slow to however slow you need to play everything perfectly, and then increase the tempo from there. Point number 3 is it will actually reduce tension as well. So similar to what we just talked about, you put the metronome on a very slow speed and you won't be so tense. You won't be trying to play everything on time when you're not ready to, right? So again, if you're trying to play it way too fast, people tend to tense up, right? Because they're trying to go 100 miles an hour and they're not used to playing that fast, and they end up locking up their wrist, and they lock up their forearm, and they kind of just start banging on the keys versus actually just playing the piano. And there's a huge difference. And when you play without tension, you play without that, without that tension, without that lock up in your wrist, that's going to actually help you play a lot faster because you're not so tense, you're not so locked up. It's also going to prevent injury, right? So if you're trying to play a song way too fast, you're not ready for it, and the entire time you're practicing, let's say 30 minutes or an hour even, that entire time you're completely locked up in your wrist and in your forearm and in your shoulders, you start doing that long term every day for a month or a year, you're very likely to injure yourself if you're constantly playing with a lot of tension for an hour every single day. Instead, you can use the metronome, put it on a slow beat per minute, and you can play the correct notes, and you can go slow enough where you can really focus on your muscles. You can focus on how you're physically playing the piece, and you can actually evaluate yourself, make sure that you don't have any tension so that you can avoid injuries in the future. Next point about the piano is that you can increase the tempo gradually with the metronome. This is a huge piece, especially if you don't have a teacher, you don't have somebody who's giving you any kind of feedback about what you're playing. It might be difficult for you to know that you are actually improving. And one very clear way that you can know that you're improving is if last week you were playing the same song at 80 beats per minute and this week you're playing it at 90 beats per minute, then you improved. Because if you can still play everything correctly, your phrasing is still good, the tempo is now increased, and you're still playing with the correct fingerings, you're playing the correct notes, and you can do all of those things, but you can do it at a faster tempo, then you're improving. You're getting better, because a lot of people, they can't play at that tempo, or maybe you couldn't play at that tempo last week and now you can. So you know that you're improving. This is huge again, especially if you don't have a teacher, because sometimes it can be tough to evaluate if you're actually getting better. And using a metronome will help you do this for what I just told you, because if you can't play at a certain tempo right now, Try to up it every week or every day, maybe, even if you're improving fast, right? You can go up by 5 beats per minute, play the same thing. If you can still play it really well with the correct phrasing, correct notes, all of that stuff, then you can move on to the next piece. You can move on to increasing the tempo by another 5 beats until you get to that target tempo, right? What you can even do is you can work up your way to play faster than what the song actually is. And then you know you really have the song down, because if the song is at 110 beats per minute and you can play it at 120, then when you go down to the actual tempo the song is really at, it's going to feel like a breeze. It's going to feel very easy for you because you can play it at a faster level. So all of those reasons why is why you should really be using a metronome no matter what, especially if you're a beginner. Just to recap, it's going to help you from rushing or dragging. It's going to help you make sure that you reduce tension in your muscles. It's going to help you make sure your phrasing is correct as well. It's also going to let you know that you are improving. You are getting better at the piano as you can increase that tempo. And the last point, again, is it will help you with your muscle memory. So you'll be able to remember songs long term in the future, even if you're not practicing them every single day. With all that said, I do have a free guide on my website that's 34 more essential tips for the brand new piano player. To get that, click on the link is down below. To get that, it's completely free. I am offering lessons right now via Zoom. To get started with those, send me an email. Link is down below. Happy practicing. My name is Josh with Late Start Piano.